Thank you all for coming. I hope that you will find this talk informative and entertaining. I started doing the research for this project probably about 2 years ago. I was actually doing research on a gas station in DeWitt. And in looking at the maps for DeWitt, I found a reference to an Airdome theater. I had never heard of one. And then a few weeks later, found a reference to one in Eureka Springs. There's not much online about Airdome theaters. And there's virtually nothing out there about those in Arkansas, very little written material as well. So I started doing the research and decided that I would do a paper for the Southeast Society of Architectural Historians Conference last October in San Antonio, Texas. We had about 55 people that attended that session, and when I asked them how many had heard of Airdomes, only 2 hands went up. One of the people I found out later had written a book on theaters, and the other person was doing theater research. So obviously this is a topic that is not really well known beyond Arkansas as well. So I'm hoping that this is kind of something that will whet your appetite about this topic. There's a lot more research that can be done on it. So we'll go ahead and get started on this topic. On June 6, 1933, in Camden, New Jersey, Richard M. Hollingshead Jr. made movie history when he opened the first drive-in movie theater. Just the month before, Hollingshead had been granted a patent for what he had described in the application as a new and useful outdoor theater, whereby the transportation facilities to and from the theater are made to constitute an element of the seating facilities, wherein the performance, such as a motion picture show or the like, may be seen and heard from a series of automobiles so arranged in relation to the stage or screen that the successive cars behind each other will not obstruct the view. The plan that accompanied Hollingshead's patent application illustrated the layout of the drive-in, which included an open space surrounded by a fence and trees with screen and projection booth at one end. Semicircular rows for the cars were laid out in front of the screen. On that first night, the main feature was Wife Beware, which starred Adolphe Menjou. In addition, several short films accompanied the main feature. Interestingly, even though Hollingshead's drive-in theater was granted a patent, the basic concept, minus the automobiles, was not new. Only a few decades before, a similar type of open-air theater called the Airdome sprang up across the country. Although not meant for automobiles, it was designed for pedestrians who would walk in for an evening of outdoor movies or other entertainment. Arkansas was not left out in the cold with respect to the Airdome, and between about 1905 and 1933, at least 20 of these theaters were found throughout the state. The counties that you see highlighted in yellow illustrate the counties around Arkansas that I know had Airdome theaters at one point in time. Experiments with motion pictures began in the late 19th century, and the first true motion pictures taken with a single camera were done by the Frenchman Etienne Jules Marie in 1882, and this is his photograph here. Marie made a cylindrical photographic plate that took 12 images in 1 second as the plate rotated. However, it was not until Thomas Edison entered the scene that film, developed in 1891 by Edison's employee William Dixon, became the norm. Although Edison's film was designed to be viewed in a box he called the kinetoscope by one person at a time, experiments with projecting film on a screen were also occurring in other countries around the world, including England, France, and Germany. Edison became associated with the development of projection film in 1896 with the invention of the vitascope, which was based on the work of Thomas Armat, another American inventor. Since Edison had already had several films in a variety of subjects, he instantly dominated the market for moving pictures. On April 23, 1896, at Coster and Biles Music Hall at Broadway and 34th Street in New York, the debut of his showing a projected film to a paying audience occurred. A rave review of the movies was given by the Dramatic Mirror, which reported, "The first picture shown was the Lee sisters in their umbrella dance. The effect was the same as if the girls were there on stage. All their smiles and kicks and bows were seen. The second picture represented the breaking of waves on the seashore. Wave after wave came tumbling on the sand, and they struck, broke into tiny floods, just like the real thing. Some people in the front rows seemed to be afraid they were going to get wet and looked about to see where they could run to in case the waves came too close. It was only a matter of time, given the success of the performance at Coster and Biles Music Hall, until the idea of taking motion pictures outside, and consequently the Airdome, would develop. The development of the Airdome Theater began around the turn of the 20th century, especially with the development of amusement parks created by electric trolley companies. The parks brought about the development of the theaters and allowed them to be close to home, often in the central business district of a community. It is believed that the first Airdome theater on record was the Airdome Theater in Topeka, Kansas, which opened on July 4th, 1905, with a vaudeville program. One contemporary source reported the Airdome sprang up for the general health of mankind, for after being shut indoors through the winter, the health of every individual demands all the outdoor air possible in work or pleasure. Hence, from natural causes and the public good, has the fad for the Airdome sprung. When the first Airdomes appeared on the scene, the editorial page of Billboard in the fall of 1909 predicted that with no expensive building to rent and vacant lots being cheap, the Airdome immediately proved to be not only a more comfortable place of amusement, but an inexpensive one for the promoter. This is the reason why there will be more Airdomes next summer, and they will be erected and conducted on a scale more elaborate. The prediction was true, and it is known that between 1905 and 1915, 439 Airdomes theaters existed in 36 states, as well as Canada and France. Will Locke, an actor who worked in Airdomes, described the general layout of an Airdome theater in a 1948 article in Billboard magazine. He wrote, "It was usually located on a choice lot in the heart of the town and was enclosed with a high board fence. The seating arrangement was chairs and benches, and the capacity from 500 to 1,500 people. Some had a canvas roof that was adjustable to either open air or for protection in case of rain. The stage was permanently roofed and often well equipped with a regular stock of scenery. Dressing rooms were at either side or at the back, and all facilities were much the same as found in regular opera houses." Currently, the earliest known Airdome theater in Arkansas was in Eureka Springs, which was opened by August of 1908 at the corner of Spring and Pine Streets. A 1908 advertisement proclaimed that at the big Airdome Theater, the program for Monday night, August 10th, is as follows: Diabolic Itching, The Boy, the Bust, and the Bath, Clog Making and Brittany, Music Teacher. On Tuesday night, August 11th, we will show you the great Engaged Against His Will, Parley von Frankate, and The Nomad. You should not miss either of these 2 nights, as they are good ones. The song both nights, School Days. The admission is always the same, only $1 dime. The presence of the Airdome in Eureka Springs early on made perfect sense, since the community developed in the late 1800s as visitors from all over the region came to take the waters at its famous springs. The development of the Airdome in small-town Arkansas is not surprising, since the construction of Airdome Theater allowed movies and vaudeville entertainment to play in communities that did not have a permanent theater structure. The layout of the Airdome in Eureka Springs was rather typical of the theaters found around the state. The 1909 Sanborn map that you see here for the city illustrates the theater and indicates that it has no roof, Airdome. The map also showed that the southwest side had a retaining wall, a necessity given its location next to a steep hillside, and an ironclad fence on the other 3 sides. Sanborn maps for other cities in the state often gave more detail on the layout of the theaters, including the location of projection booths, screens, and in rare cases, even the layout of the seating. Seating is shown on the 1914 map for Corning, which shows 2 sets of bleachers, 1 on each side of the theater. Heber Springs also had seats down each side of the theater, while Hot Springs had seats arranged in curving rows in front of the stage. Picture machines are also shown on some maps, including this 1911 map for Arkadelphia and the 1919 map for DeWitt. Stages are also shown on many Sanborn maps, including those for Clarksville, Dardanelle, Heber Springs, Russellville, Stuttgart, and Mena, which also indicated that the 2-story building had the ticket office on the first floor and the operator's booth on the second floor. Fences, according to the Sanborn maps, varied in height from 7 to 10 feet. Newspaper and other articles also give some insights into the design and layout of airdomes across Arkansas. The Airdome in Malvern, for example, was enclosed by a high fence made of rough sawn oak boards. The seats were of the bleacher type and made of rough white oak lumber. The piano was housed in a small frame building rolled out on a platform in front of the first row of seats where the public could hear the music. In the southeast corner of the Airdome facing Main Street was a confectionery stand operated by Johnny Wharton. Photographs of Arkansas's airdomes are virtually non-existent. In fact, this is the only one I was able to find. This shows the Clarice Airdome in Heber Springs. The photo shows that the front facade of the theater was covered in weatherboard siding with a large central entrance and a mission-style parapet in the center. 4 windows, 2 on each side, flanked the large entrance, and another small window was located above the entrance. Small lighted arches were located at each end of the facade, as well as in the center. Signs with posters also lined the sidewalk in front of the theater. The Clarice was surrounded by a board fence, and it had slatted benches where patrons sat facing the screen. The Clarice was also up to date in the fact that when it opened, it boasted that Mr. Frauenthal has purchased 2 high-class motion picture machines in order that there will be no intermission between changing films. Instead of having to wait until the operator changes films, there will be one continuous performance, the second machine being brought into use as soon as the film is run through on the first. In order to draw people into the Airdome Theater, several of the venues in Arkansas had gimmicks or special events to increase their popularity and appeal to a wider audience. In Malvern, for example, beginning in 1913, the Airdome in that community began to offer several incentives for attendees. A 1913 advertisement for the August 15th program boasted that all children under 12 years will be admitted free if accompanied by a parent or a guardian. Extra nice program. This program will meet with your approval. Bring out the children. We change our program every night. We show only the latest up-to-date subjects. Our programs are so varied that they please every taste. When you want to see a good show, come to the Airdome. A couple of years later, a 1915 advertisement in the Malvern Meteor for the film The Goddess touted season tickets now selling. Buy one and save money. However, it was not just Malvern that offered incentives for children to attend the show at an Airdome. The Airdome associated with the Dixie Theater in Wynn also offered special shows and admission prices for children. A September 21st, 1917 article in the Wynn Progress reported, at the Airdome Tuesday night, the first episode of The Fatal Ring, in which Pearl White is starring, was shown to a very large audience. It is the most absorbing and mysteriously thrilling serial ever screened, and local photoplay fans will be kept on tiptoe of delightful anticipation, awaiting the next startling episode. Pearl White has achieved the biggest triumph of her career in this splendid serial. Realizing that Miss White is a particular favorite with the children of Wynn, manager Bademan has arranged to give a matinee every Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock, to which children under 12 will be admitted at the low price of 5 cents. At these matinees each week, The Fatal Ring will be given together with the full program of the night show. Also, for the benefit of the country people and the children as well, a regular Saturday matinee will be given at 3 o'clock each week, at which the full night program of comedy, Pathé News, and Little Mary McAllister will be given each week. 2 fine Paramount pictures are on the program for the coming week, while Little Mary McAllister will again be seen tomorrow night in another delightful juvenile picture. However, it was not just through reduced admission that the state's airdomes tried to attract patrons. Giveaways were another popular lure to draw customers to the theaters. In Stuttgart, for example, the local Airdome had a newspaper, the Airdome Bulletin. In the one surviving issue that has been found, from August 2nd, 1913, it boasted that there would be a cash prize given away tonight. The idea of a giveaway was also used by Clarence Frauenthal on the opening night of the Clarice Airdome in Heber Springs. An article in the local newspaper, the Jacksonian, bragged that, In addition to the popular picture program, there's been added as special attraction for the opening night a proposition to give a real live baby to the person holding the lucky number. Unfortunately, there was never an explanation given on what the real live baby was, or whether it helped to draw patrons or actually scared them away. Sometimes giveaways were done in conjunction with special events at the Airdome, as was the case in Malvern. During the summer of 1915, the Malvern Airdome held a beauty contest, and votes were given with the admission ticket to the theater. The Malvern Meteor reported, Monday night, Mr. McDonald inaugurated a beauty and popularity contest, which will continue until Saturday night, July 15th, when the following prizes will be awarded. First prize will be $20 in gold. Second prize will be $10 in gold. Third prize, $5 in gold. And fourth prize, $2.50. 4 young ladies entered Monday night, whose pictures were shown on the screen at the Monday night show. Any lady is invited to enter, and Mr. McDonald has agreed to have photos made of anyone who enters, and which will be shown on the screen each Thursday and Saturday night. The prizes are well worth working for, and we advise all the young ladies to look in the glass and see what chance they have. Votes will be given with each ticket to the Airdome, 10 votes with a 10-cent ticket and 5 votes with a 5-cent ticket. Interestingly, the hosting of a beauty contest at the Malvern Airdome also illustrates another trend that was found in several Arkansas communities, and that was the use of the local Airdome for purposes other than screening the latest movie. Music, for example, was a popular pastime at the Airdome Theater, and not just to accompany the movie. Malvern's Airdome, for example, had a piano that was housed in the small frame building and rolled out on a platform in front of the first row of seats where the public could hear the music. Fayetteville, whose Airdome opened in 1910 and was later known as the Sky Dome, by 1915 had an orchestra called the Airdome Theater Orchestra that entertained audiences at the theater, and this is a picture of that orchestra. At least some Airdome theaters in Arkansas, such as the one in Eureka Springs, included songs as part of their show, and this occurred in other states as well. As Landis Magnuson indicates in his article on airdomes, a mid-May 1909 opening of the San Antonio Airdome, headlined by the singer Dorothy Owen, also included illustrated songs. However, the use of the Airdome was not just for movies or music. At least 2 communities in Arkansas hosted boxing matches at their Airdomes. An advertisement in the DeWitt New Era advertised boxing Saturday night after First Picture Show and the Chautauqua at the Airdome, DeWitt, start at 10:30. The Airdome in Corning, Arkansas also hosted boxing at its venue in 1919 when the Clay County Courier reported that the 10-round boxing contest staged by Joe Rand and Otto Fettinger, local pugilistic expert amateurs, at the Starlight Airdome Wednesday evening was a fair, square, clean sporting event and resulted in a draw. One interesting function of the Airdome in Corning that may have been unique in Arkansas is the fact that it was also used for lectures and public meetings. In 1910, for example, the Corning Courier reported that an organization of businessmen of this city was perfected at the Airdome Theater Thursday night of last week, the object of which is to take steps to bring Corning before the industrial world, seek to bring new enterprises to our town, invite farmers to come and locate in our vicinity, and be a general factor in the promotion of our town and county. Educational lectures were also hosted at the Corning Airdome on at least 2 occasions. In 1917, for example, Virgil Eady, Henry Johnson, Chester Bradley, and Arvin Miller, bright boys, inmates of and representing the International Order of Oddfellows, Widows and Orphans Home, and composing a cornet band were here last evening at Ward's Airdome with a film showing of the above-mentioned institution. While 2 years later, in 1919, Dr. Norton of Little Rock, a U.S. government health lecturer, spoke and used diagrams, etc., before the large audience at Ward's Airdome Monday night. The decline of the Airdome Theater is not linked to one specific cause. Rather, several factors led to the demise of the Airdome as a venue for popular entertainment. The types of entertainment and performances that were offered by the traveling companies that played the Airdome circuits was one factor that led to the demise, as was the impact of changing technology. In addition, the fact that most airdomes were near the commercial centers of communities where real estate values were rising also contributed from the Aerodome disappearing from the stage. As one historian has put it, increasing street noises from automobiles and the rising values placed on midtown locations forced such open-air theatricals to an end. Another historian also indicated that the development of air conditioning, as well as transportation advances that lessened rural isolation, were other factors that contributed to the end of the Airdome. In Arkansas, the heyday appears to have been in the 19-teens, while by the 1920s, the number of Airdome theaters in the state was already declining. Throughout the last half of the 1920s and early 1930s, the Film Daily film yearbooks listed 3 or fewer Airdomes in Arkansas each year. In fact, during the early 1930s, only 2 Airdomes were listed in Arkansas, one in Thornton and one in Foreman. Although the Airdome did survive in limited numbers as late as World War II, ironically, it appears that the last 2 Airdomes in Arkansas closed in 1933, the same year that Richard M. Hollingshead Jr. opened his drive-in in Camden, New Jersey. Located in Thornton and Foreman, 2 small and isolated communities, the last 2 Airdomes in the state would have provided the cheap and convenient entertainment that Airdomes had been developed for 30 years before. Although increasing real estate values, the rise in the use of air conditioning, and transportation decreasing rural isolation likely played some role in the closing of the Thornton and Foreman Airdomes, the Great Depression, raging in an already poor state, certainly would not have helped the Airdome's cause. The lack of information on Airdome theaters in Arkansas is likely a direct result of the impermanence of the theaters. Airdome theaters were cheaper to build and operate than a full-fledged movie theater, and they were often replaced relatively quickly by permanent theater buildings, or operated in conjunction with permanent theater buildings, or they faded away after a few seasons. In the case of the Airdome in Stuttgart, between 1913 and 1917, it had closed and been replaced by Wigwam's Moving Picture Theater, which had also closed. And you can see the 1913 map on the left and the 1917 map on the right showing the change in the site. In Clarksville, on the other hand, the Airdome remained open but consolidated with the Dunlap Theater and the New Theater. As was reported in the newspaper, the regular program will be shown at the Airdome every night. The New Theater will be closed during the summer, except on rainy nights or to accommodate crowds of extra attractions. The impermanent nature of the Airdome theaters and the probable small budgets also seem to have meant little or no money for advertising. In several communities where Airdomes were known to exist, advertisements never appeared in the newspapers. The fact that the Airdome was a seasonal establishment was also a major contributing factor to its impermanence. Although little specific detail on the Airdome's season exists for Arkansas, it is known that the 1914 season in Clarksville opened at the Airdome on Wednesday, June 24th, and closed on Saturday, September 19th. The advertisements also illustrate the advantages of the Airdome over a regular theater in the days prior to the widespread use of air conditioning, when it points out, "Come to the Airdome and sit under the skies, coolest place in town," and that it is also cool, clean, comfortable. Once the Airdomes across Arkansas closed, the sites were quickly put to other uses. In almost all cases, buildings that housed a variety of businesses were built on the sites, which seems to prove the notion that the real estate values in commercial centers were rising. This, for example, shows Clarksville. This is Eureka Springs. This is Wynn. And here is Beebe. In Beebe, for example, the Airdome location was at the corner of Main and Center Streets, the literal heart of the city's business district. Today, only 2 known sites, those here in Russellville and also in Dardanelle, are vacant lots. But few, if any, people know the legacy of the airdomes that were once located there. For many reasons, the passage of time and the lack of written history among them, the history and legacy of the Airdome in Arkansas is slowly fading to black. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes.
I'm just wondering for logistics, where would they store the machinery? Were those housed in a little building?
In most cases, or at least in all cases that I've been able to determine, yes.
And if they made it into a whole theater, they would use that same sort of projection booth, do you think? Is that what would happen?
Possibly. I don't have a whole lot of documentation on how these sites transformed from the open air Airdome into a permanent theater structure. It may be that the projection booth building from the Airdome was incorporated into a new structure, or it may be that they just demolished it all and just built a new structure from scratch. The documentation isn't real clear on that, unfortunately.
The technology of the projectors, you figure that the technology was getting better over the period of time the Airdome was there. That contributed to the demise, or
I don't know, I don't know if that contributed to the demise or not. In certain respects, it may have, but also, I mean, the technology that would have been used, for example, towards the end of the period, is probably the same type of technology that would have been used in the drive-ins, which of course continued up in some cases to the present day. So I don't know that the change in technology necessarily contributed to that. One of the other interesting questions that had been asked of me once before was, some of these theaters had afternoon matinees, and how did that work? The bright sunlight, how would you be able to see the film? And I don't know, unless in the case of those theaters, those were ones that had kind of the canvas awning over the top to provide at least some shade for the theater patrons. Let's start with you.
I don't know about Hollywood history, but Hollywood began to control the theaters, didn't it? And maybe that was the situation that Hollywood came to walk in, and the outdoor film seemed more independent. Maybe they couldn't get those opportunities.
That could be true too, and also the fact that the Airdome was not used just for movies, but also vaudeville and other things. It was more of a jack of all trades type structure. That may have also, and it may be that the vaudeville programs just weren't as popular, and the touring circuits were phased out. This is why there's a lot more research that can be done. Yeah, right.
What about the sound systems? I mean, was it difficult to hear, or, you said some of the locations had 500 to 1,500
Yeah,
seats.
yeah.
So it sounds to me like the sound system would be pretty good, which kind of surprises me in the time period.
The sound system had to be at least somewhat good in order to cover that amount of distance, but also one of the things that contributed to the demise was the increase in traffic noise. So it may have been good for the early part of the Airdome period, but by the end it apparently was pretty inadequate.
When did 29 when the talkies came in?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Heydays were just the piano.
Right. Yeah.
Ralph, you may have addressed this before I got here, my apologies. What days of the week did these shows go on?
It kind of varied. Obviously, a lot of them were on the weekends, but there were also some during the week. Some theaters had like Monday nights or Thursday nights. I think it really kind of depended on the community that the theater was in, but I didn't see a trend where they were only on specific nights throughout the country. It kind of varied.
It just shows how lively these little towns were
Exactly.
at night and on the weekends, whereas now
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Did I see another question back there? Yeah.
I noticed that one of the ads you had up there said there was seats for 5 cents and 10 cents. And another said that, you could vote for your baby or whoever it was.
Right.
More votes for 10 cents than 5, but assuming that was just the quality of the seat.
Probably so. And some of those theaters, it may have been where you had, bleacher seats along the sides and then maybe just wooden benches kind of in the center. And that may have been, the bleacher seats being elevated, you would have had a better view. So to me, those probably would have been the more expensive seats. And, just flat wood benches in the center would have been pretty primitive, quite frankly. Yes?
I think it's kind of fun to go back there. A lot of communities, downtown, they show movies outside are real popular.
Yep.
I see several other cities that are incorporating that.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, we do movies in the park here. When I got back from speaking at the conference in San Antonio, a person from the University of Louisville had sent me a link for an open-air theater that had been designed for a community in Alabama within the past couple of years. And it's really an interesting thing. It's designed to look like a house, and then it all unfolds to form the seats and the screen and the projection area. So it was really an interesting, and I can't remember the name of the town off the top of my head, but it's in Alabama. So if you do a search for open-air theater in Alabama, my guess is you can come up with it. It's a new structure. It was an art project done within the last 5 years.
Did they reclaim material from a house and things?
Yes, there had been a house on the site that they had demolished. It was deteriorated, and so they had salvaged some of those materials to create this theater structure. So it's really a neat little adaptive reuse, I guess, kind of project. Any other questions? Okay.
I do have a question. When is your talk on the drive-in theater?
Several years down the road.